Today is our fourth Sunday in the Rest on Purpose. And so as we make this turn toward home, it is helpful to review where we've been over these previous weeks. We began this journey by exploring how Sabbath is a natural practice built into how the world has been created and how humans and animals have been shaped and formed. Rest is necessary, ordered by God. Then we looked at Sabbath as a gift, a day for joy and delight, a day to experience the creation, a day to spend time with those we love. And then last week, we looked at Sabbath as a day to honor others. Our rest is to provide for the rest of other people as well. One purpose of Sabbath is to make sure that others have that day of joy and rest like we do. So today, we look at how Sabbath confronts our restlessness. And if there's any theologian of the church who knows about restlessness, it is Augustine of Hippo. Now, Augustine was a bishop in the 4th century who, you probably don't know, had an incredible influence on the church. He's the most important theologian in the church. Besides Jesus of Nazareth and Paul the Apostle, Augustine has done more to shape the understanding of Christian faith than anyone in history. But before his conversion, Augustine was a scholar, studying the most sophisticated philosophies of his day, knowing all the great religions of the world, journeying wherever he had to go to find the most outstanding teachers. Augustine was also a partier, always looking for a good time, the next soiree, running from one fleeting love affair to another. And Augustine prized himself on being detached, always able to pick up and go on his way, nothing to root him, nothing to keep him tethered in one place. But after his conversion, Augustine reflects on this period of his life, and he says that all of it was defined by a kind of restlessness. He says about his uncommitted, scholarly, partying life, "I was storm-tossed, gushing out, running every which way, frothing into thin air in my filthy affairs. I had left myself and couldn't find me. I turned myself into a famished land I had to live in." You ever been there? Trying to convince yourself that the uncommitted life is freedom? A life that fills the void of self-doubt and anxiety by looking for the next night out or the next big trip? A life that believes that just getting that next degree or getting that next promotion, that will bring fulfillment. The next get, that's going to make sure that all of my needs are met. I had left myself and couldn't find me. Generations before Augustine, Nehemiah knew this too. Nehemiah was a Jew. He served the king of Persia, and he had a vision from God to return to his homeland of Judah, to Jerusalem, to reconstruct the city. This is some 70 years after the kingdom of Babylon had come and sacked Jerusalem, leveled the temple, and carted all the people into exile. Nehemiah has this vision now that Persians are in charge. They allow him to return to his homeland, and what he finds there is general disorder and a complete lack of knowledge about the ways of God. So he gets to work. They start by rebuilding the wall around the perimeter of the city, and then Nehemiah calls for a public reading of the law of God as a way of calling the people back to faithfulness. He then goes back to Persia. He's got some affairs to finish up there, but when he returns to Jerusalem, he finds that no sooner had he left than the people had reverted back to their old ways of neglecting God's instruction. And one of those things they're neglecting is the Sabbath. Treading wine presses, bringing in grain on the backs of donkeys, setting up a marketplace in the square. The Tyrians who lived on the coast were bringing their latest catch of fish in to be sold at market. This day hallowed for worship and for rest, being reduced to just another day at the supermarket or to go outlet shopping. And Nehemiah knows that the people have left themselves. Without Sabbath, we forget who we are. We cave to the cheap tricks and the idols that promise more than they can ever provide. So Nehemiah, the next Sabbath, closes up the gates of the city at sundown. But the addiction to consuming and convenience is so strong that all the merchants stay outside the wall, banging to get in, to go ahead and sell their wares. Nehemiah has to confront them from atop the wall and say, I'm going to have to lay hands on you if you all don't leave. He sets up the Levites as sentries to make sure that the Sabbath is honored. Why? Because it makes God angry and God's wrath will be poured out? Well, that's one way to interpret it. But also, the Sabbath teaches us that there is a threat of being consumed by our consumption. That we were not created to buy and acquire, but to worship a God who's created the world in patterns of work and rest. Constant consumption is bad for us. It turns our desire away from God and toward those other ends that ultimately destroy us and our neighbors. We see it all around us. It happens on a major level. This is what drives tyrants to rally armies and invade neighboring lands. Companies to pursue the maximum productivity by exploiting children in desperate countries with manual labor. Causes us to turn a blind eye to the health of the planet, trying to create things more cheaply and using elements that will never biodegrade in the seas. We want, and nothing can stop us from it. Happens on the personal level too. When we see the body of another person as something that can be possessed, and we decide to take advantage of that through violence, assault, abuse. It happens when we drive up our debt by maxing out yet another credit card, or when we devolve into gluttony, gorging ourselves yet again. It's the addict who's always looking for the next fix, or the next hit, willing to do whatever's necessary to get to that place. The child who circles every single toy in the Christmas catalog. The constant Facebook and Amazon ads that somehow magically know all of our greatest temptations and wants. Those push notifications to the phone, that can't miss deal at the car dealership, or that great sale at the grocery store that you just can't pass up. I had left myself and couldn't find me. Nehemiah confronts the merchants and the people in Jerusalem. He shouts at them that they are profaning the Sabbath. And that's an important word, because if we do not hold Sabbath as a holy day of rest and worship, then we quickly no longer see the earth as sacred. We no longer see our neighbor as an image bearer of God. We no longer see ourselves as anything other than our power or our possessions. Our consumption drives us mad. So Sabbath is our way out. The ads disappear. The neighbor is seen and honored and loved. The earth is tended, and we are given the space to acknowledge the dis-ease of the creation. And by God's grace, we are able to take a step along a different path. As Professor James K.A. Smith writes, where we rest is a matter of what and how we love. Humans are those strange creatures who can never be fully satisfied by anything created, though that never stops us from trying. Sabbath is the invitation. Stop trying. Find the true object of your longing and desire. Know the peace of God that is for you. Shut the gate. Shut the gate. About a year ago, I got a letter. Can I share some of it with you this morning? Dear Pastor Whaley, may I introduce myself? My name is Gene Pritchard, and I'm a former member of RCPC. My husband, Sam Pritchard, died in 2010, and I toughed it out for 3 years by myself until I moved to Franklin, Tennessee to be near one of my daughters. It was hard to leave the home I had lived in for 58 years, but it was harder to leave my church. I was an active member of the Women of the Church and the Monday morning prayer group. And now I am writing you to tell you that I am coming home soon. I don't know when, but I have been given a diagnosis by my doctor and am currently receiving wonderful care from hospice. I'm coming back to the columbarium where my husband waits for me. And I think that our niche is next to the herbs. Mimi was my best friend, sister in love, confidant, you name it, for over 50 years. God is so good to me. I do not hurt, but am fading away. And I look forward to whatever God has in mind for me. If Augustine says I had left myself and couldn't find me, the way out of that destructive path of consumption is what Gene Pritchard knew. You've got to find your way back home. And not to a home that you've created and crafted, but a home that has been crafted and has drawn you in. To find your way back to the one who has shaped the world by the rhythms of work and rest. To find your way back to the one who wants you to rejoice and praise and live in joy. To the one who has called us to love and honor the life of our neighbor. Your way back to the one who allows you to shut the gate on all the desires that wish to claim primacy in your life and instead turn that desire to the one who truly brings life. Augustine eventually found what Nehemiah demanded in Jerusalem and what Gene Pritchard discovered and lived in the Women of the Church and the Monday morning prayer group and in her beloved Seeker Sunday School class that she helped to found. Augustine's most famous quote says, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." Nothing else will do. So shut the gate, put sentries on the wall to protect the rest on purpose. Come back home and find yourself.